When I first saw Highlander back in the 80s, I was so impressed by the concept that I was expecting a solid sequel to follow soon. Well, such was the charm of the era, and sequels and extended franchises were plentiful, so you cannot really fault my expectations. However, when the sequel did happen after quite a delay of 5 years, it was a disaster, and that is me putting it mildly. Usually when the same director and cast reunite for a sequel, I am hopeful about the result, but Highlander 2: The Quickening was so bad that I cannot even classify this as one of those films that are cheesy and campy but charming. Maybe the biggest issue with the film was the introduction of the ridiculous concept of the Immortals being aliens, and it received so much hate that the makers released a recut version with a lot of changes. Even then, the movie is regarded as a forgettable mess, and I completely understand why Highlander 3 completely ignored the events of this movie, as did the Highlander TV series. So, what then is the real sequel? For me, it is a 12-issue comic book series that picks up right after the events of the original movie, and the story is far better than the sloppy movie sequel. In this video, I will bring you the real deal, the story that you deserved in movie form instead of the alien bullshit. Before I jump into the details of the comic book lore, let me give you a quick recap of how things ended in the original movie. We get a quick look at the extensive life of Connor MacLeod, who is an immortal as he braves the challenges all the way from 1536 in the Scottish Highlands to modern-day New York. He finally encounters his greatest threat ever, another immortal named Kurgan, who wants to be the last one standing so that he can subject humanity to an eternity of darkness. After a long duel, Connor is able to outfight Kurgan and decapitates him, absorbing his power. It is the perfectly happy ending if you ask me, as the evil is put down and Connor gets to live a life of peace among the mortals with his ladylove Brenda. The ending also suggests that Connor now has the ability to read the thoughts and feelings of people all around the world, and he hopes to use this to encourage cooperation, understanding, and peace in the world. But no good thing lasts forever, and the comic book series is all about the next crisis that puts Connor back into the dangerous world. The story opens in Paris, and I love how the very first panel introduces you to a world of action. The year is 1986, and a young woman and her companions are in pursuit of a strange-looking bald man, Tovarish. Even though he is asked to surrender, he refuses to oblige and even takes an innocent young lady hostage. After a tense standoff, the young woman chasing him manages to overpower him, and she asks for Tovarish to be taken to the Interpol field office until he can be safely extracted. Clearly, the young woman in charge works with the Interpol or similar organizations, but what is the big deal about Tovarish? We then get the first look at Connor MacLeod, who now goes by the name Russell Nash, as we saw in the movie itself. He is still with Brenda, who seemingly runs the store Russell Nash Antiques, and he gets a call from Tasia, the woman from earlier. She asks him to come to Paris immediately and also informs that both Furio and Volkov are on their way already. Connor realizes that it means some serious business, and he bids Brenda goodbye for a short trip to Paris. The next day, he is at the Paris field office where Tovarish is being held. He meets an elderly Dr. Volkov, and apparently Connor knows him from before, just like the other individual there named Paul. Tasia fills him in with all that happened, and finally we get to know what it is all about. The KGB was sent here to Paris in pursuit of Tovarish, who fled a Soviet work camp a week ago and left behind a trail of bodies. They all look at the bald man held inside, and there is a tattoo on his body with something written in Russian, and everyone is alarmed. A quick flashback of Kurgan is enough to make it evident that Tovarish has ties to him, and the next sequence of events confirms this further. Tovarish senses the presence of Connor, and he goes on a rant saying that the passing of Kurgan will only strengthen his legacy because Mother Russia will start anew in the image of its rightful ruler. An Interpol officer goes in to contain Tovarish, but he is overpowered and Tovarish breaks out with his gun. But the mystery around him is left unresolved after he is shot dead. Meanwhile, the conversations between Connor and Tasia make me wonder if she is an immortal as well. Clearly, she is aware of the existence of immortals. Then comes another shocker as they all watch the news of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in Russia, and Connor is smart enough to connect the dots. He asks Tasia to get him into Moscow quietly, and he is determined that he will only return after he has killed every last one of those animals, who supposedly work on the principles of Kurgan like a twisted cult. So, thus it begins, a deadly mission that includes Connor, Tasia, Paul, and Dr. Volkov. On the way to Moscow in a helicopter, Tasia tells Connor that the KGB has no clue about the connection between the Chernobyl disaster and the suspect who was arrested and died in Paris. They also don't know about the two Immortals and a scientist that she is sneaking in. Dr. Volkov and Connor engage in a conversation about their daughters, and we get a quick flashback of Connor's adoptive daughter Rachel, who goes on a trip to Europe with her partner Richard back in 1963. I wonder what happened to her, and the answer comes soon enough. Meanwhile, a masked swordsman sneaks into a facility in Moscow and takes a book titled Temnotya. He is spotted by the guards, but he makes quick work of them and a van sneaks him away. A conversation among those in the van and the masked man reveals that the Chernobyl massacre is indeed their doing, and they want to do a lot worse in order to remind the country and the world what they should fear: the name of Kurgan. Something sinister is brewing, and the ghost of Kurgan refuses to let Connor go, even after his death. The next flashback sequence takes us back to Moscow in 1963 once again, and Prime Minister Khrushchev is shown interacting with Dr. Volkov. He talks about the special project that Volkov is involved with, and he introduces him to Comrade Kurgan, who he places in charge of the military training procedure for the project called Temnotya. Yes, the same book that is stolen in the current timeline. Khrushchev also tells Volkov that the project facility will be in Berlin, and even though Volkov is concerned about the security risks, Kurgan dismisses them all. He even asks him to bring his wife and daughter with him, and I can already sense something bad about to happen. I really like such forms of storytelling where the panels jump from one timeline to another to tell the complete story. For instance, we have a quick flashback from 1963 again, where Connor is visited by Sergeant W. W. Hicks, who knows that he is an immortal. He tells Connor about a secret program in Russia on super soldiers who do not need to sleep or eat and is way more resilient than normal men. The sergeant wants Connor to go and check if the news is true, and it will be a mission off the records. Meanwhile, back to the present, the helicopter carrying the Immortals and Dr. Volkov is brought down by a missile, and the Immortals soon find themselves fighting the men who go by Kurgan's ideals. They all seem very committed to the cause, but there is a surprising twist in the fight when they just go away in a van in the middle of an intense duel. To make matters worse, the Russian forces surround them all and arrest them at gunpoint. What follows next is something I can only describe as getting to the serious part of the business. The Immortals are held captive and Tasia is questioned. She is suspected of treason, and all the evidence points against her because the cultists who follow Kurgan are nowhere on the scene. But instead of trying to work it out with words, Tasia chooses violence, and she kills a few agents to get out and frees Connor, Paul, and Dr. Volkov. Another flashback from 1964 shows how their paths crossed earlier when Connor went on the assignment of Sergeant Hicks and landed in Berlin to explore the secret facility. Agent Tasia was there as well, clearly another immortal, and so was Paul. They witnessed the mysterious facility and sensed the presence of another immortal, which was Kurgan in all likelihood. Back in the present, they all take a ride out of Moscow, but they have someone on their tail, someone who probably has ties with the Kurgan clan. It is revealed soon that they are all headed to Siberia, but the story becomes all the more interesting because of the flashback details of all that happened back in 1964. When Connor, Paul, and Tasia come across Kurgan in the facility, they were shocked to learn the real details of the secret program. With the help of Dr. Volkov, Kurgan had assembled a team of super soldiers. While they weren't immortals, they were extremely strong, felt no pain, and fought like true warriors. They also had a longer lifespan because of slow aging, and they were all united to work for Kurgan and his purpose. Kurgan made them attack the trio, and the fight intensified because taking them down was not easy. Meanwhile, Dr. Volkov didn't approve of the way his invention was being used, and with the KGB and German forces set to arrive soon, Kurgan decided to make a run for it with his men. However, he didn't leave before killing Dr. Volkov's wife and daughter, and he tried to fly into another facility in Siberia. Connor and his team followed, and Connor even got on his aircraft as a vicious duel saw them both fall from the air, with Tasia piloting, Paul and Dr. Volkov behind. I don't think I am exaggerating when I say that the next stage of the narrative is absolutely chaotic. Firstly, the fight gets a lot worse back in 1964 as Kurgan and Connor have an intense fight as Tasia and Paul take on the super soldiers. It doesn't go too well for Connor, and Kurgan almost overpowers him until Dr. Volkov steps in with his super weapon and gives Connor the opportunity to survive by blowing Kurgan away. Of course, it wouldn't kill an immortal like him, and we all know how Kurgan fights Connor in the movie, but it does save Connor back in 1964. However, the real twist is saved for the present timeline, as Tasia, Connor, Paul, and Dr. Volkov reach the secret facility in Siberia. They go through the place littered with deadly traps only to realize that Tasia was playing them all along. She reveals that the plan was to get Dr. Volkov here because she needs his expertise to restart the program that was left incomplete back then. The super soldiers are by her side and the odds are stacked against Connor, but in a swift move he attacks Tasia, and the very moment the KGB and soldiers step in and the super soldiers make a run for their lives, determined to continue the fight for the kind of supremacy that Kurgan dreamed of. Once again, Connor is back home and reunited with Brenda, and they are visited by his cousin Duncan MacLeod. However, in a shocking turn of events, Brenda gets caught up in an accident and she is taken to the hospital. The immortal Connor can do nothing to help but pray. Connor reflects on his long life and his previous moments with his loved ones who have been mortals. He is in a really bad shape, remembering his time as a soldier during the Second World War and then asking his cousin to take him out if Brenda doesn't make it. Luckily, the surgery goes well and the doctor gives him enough optimism to get a hold on himself. I think this particular event comes like a welcome break after all the intense fighting and near-death encounters, and it gives us a moment to reflect on the human element in the immortal and the emotional toll of living so long. I guess I don't mind being immortal myself. The story then throws something interesting in the mix once again. Connor realizes that there is something dark inside of him ever since he killed Kurgan and absorbed his energy. Even the followers of Kurgan said something similar about Kurgan fighting to get out, and Connor starts to feel like there is some truth to these claims. Good lord, the man simply cannot catch a break, can he? In fact, there is an instance where I almost see Kurgan in his place, when Connor seeks out an immortal woman and duels her to death, and then when her lover steps in for revenge, Connor gets him too. He realizes how he is totally not himself, and I start wondering where this dark force inside him will take him, as he discusses life with his cousin at a bar. Just when you think he can get better and control the impact of Kurgan's dark quickening, another similar incident takes place. Brenda, Connor, Rachel, and Duncan are out on a picnic when a friendly sparring session between the brothers becomes very serious. Connor is almost out of his mind and about to kill Duncan before Brenda is able to break them up, but suddenly they sense the arrival of another immortal. It turns out that a Japanese ninja clan is on their tail, sensing the vulnerability of Connor. He is kidnapped by the immortal Gordon Byrne and his associate Sakuro, and Duncan is left behind to organize a rescue mission in time. Gordon wants to harness the power for himself, and we even see a flashback that shows his training in Japan back in the 16th century. Meanwhile, Duncan is joined by another immortal woman named Kamike Minota, who promises to help him find Connor. Gordon is not hesitant to get dirty if required, and he threatens Connor to obey unless he wants Brenda and Rachel tortured and punished. Finally, Duncan and Kamike reach Connor's location, but there is an unexpected twist in the mix when Connor says he wants Duncan's head. Clearly, the dark side has gotten to him again. The next bit is rather confusing when you realize that Kamike is fighting for her own revenge against Gordon, and Duncan struggles to keep up with a vicious Duncan. He manages to subdue him with a dart and takes him to a safe place and ties him down to a bed. Meanwhile, Gordon is moving ahead with the next part of his plan, and he goes and abducts Rachel and Brenda to have the bargaining chips with himself. I love how this story arc ends with Connor's redemption and the closest thing that he can get to a happy ending. He encounters Kurgan in his subconscious, and the latter threatens to overpower him completely because he knows about the dark temptations of Connor. However, Connor stays strong, and in true MacLeod style, he defeats Kurgan once again in his subconscious. As for his brother Duncan, he safely takes the ladies Rachel and Brenda with him to see Connor as Kameke stays behind to fight Gordon. Unfortunately, Gordon proves to be too strong for her and emerges as the winner, which sets up one final duel between Gordon and Connor. The rejuvenated Connor is too powerful, and he takes out Gordon and absorbs his quickening. He regains control over himself after getting rid of Kurgan's dark side, and with that ends this particular narrative. For the final part of the comic series, we are taken to 2012 New York City, and now years have passed since Kurgan was slayed by Connor. This time around, the story focuses on Duncan MacLeod, who has deliberately isolated himself from the Immortal community after the events of the devastating Endgame. But when he hears news about the Immortals disappearing under mysterious circumstances worldwide, he decides to investigate with the hope of Mathos, the oldest known Immortal. The investigation soon sees them courting greater dangers, and for me, the most thrilling part of the narrative is when they are ambushed. Mathos is captured, and Duncan is left to fight all by himself without the experience and expertise of Mathos. Luckily for him, Joe Dawson and the Watchers intervene and hand him some crucial information. He learns that a rogue Watcher who has turned his back on the whole Watcher's code of non-interference has started a doomsday cult to seize control of the game itself. Then comes the crucial moment where Duncan goes undercover to infiltrate the cult and dismantle it from within. During this time, he even manages to locate and liberate some of the familiar Immortals who had been captured and imprisoned, and now he has more allies for his cause. What I love most about the story is the final encounter and the memorable revelation of a mysterious, unnamed Immortal who looks just like Duncan. He fights the cult and the leader, and he even endures a nuclear explosion even though it leaves him traumatized. Eventually, the threat is contained, but the story never fully reveals the exact endgame of the cult and the nature of their mission. If someone asked me to pick a favorite, I would probably go with the first story arc for the thrills and the second one for the depth. The third one is the shortest, and it is more of a filler for me, but even then, the cinematic quality of the comic book makes me wonder why such a gripping saga was not used as the rightful sequel instead of the godforsaken alien nonsense that we saw in Highlander 2. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the whole comic book narrative, and share your take on the extensive Highlander lore and the potential cinematic future of the franchise.